Well, hello there, and welcome to another in our series of In Conversation With. We are chatting to a dynamic woman today. She has a lot of accolades in the very short time that she has been running her own company, and then a list as long as my arm prior to actually starting her own company, which is called Pragmattica Consulting, which she started in 2018. Before I tell you a little bit more about her, welcome Amanda Bester. Great to have you on In Conversation With this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you about what you've been up to during lockdown. Let me just say, you've got quite an impressive, just in the 2 years of having started Pragmattica Consulting. Let's look at some of the things. You've run dozens of workshops, corporate workshops on all things digital media, which is fantastic. You've been a judge and a speaker at the IAB Digital Bookmarks Awards in South Africa. Tremendous achievement. Last year, you were also a finalist for the Africa Com Female Innovator of the Year. How do you have time to run your business, Amanda?
I don't think I quite have a set answer on that. You know, you just do what you've got to do. As soon as you become a business owner, you are kind of expected to be a jack of all trades plus a master of your trade. So yeah, lots of caffeine.
Let's just narrow it down for people who perhaps haven't come across you, and I'm sure there are not many of those, but what exactly is it that you do?
So my background is specifically in digital advertising and the digital media industry in South Africa, and it's evolved into a very sort of technical niche in terms of programmatic advertising and the advertising tech ecosystem and landscape, of which is very overwhelming and complicated industry to navigate. And so I've been in this industry for the better part of 12 years of my career, and I guess I sort of saw a gap in the market where a lot of the job functions that I facilitated as an employee of various companies, media companies and agencies, a lot of the clientele would always sort of turn to me as a thought leader and an advisor, you know, because I'm in that industry. Can you consult for us? Can you advise us? What do you recommend? And upon realizing that there isn't really any consultants that can advise businesses and individuals on this landscape and in this industry, specifically to South Africa or the South African market. And so I started Pragmattica Consulting, which specializes in digital media, advertising, marketing, and specifically monetization solutions
I think
for
that
companies.
must be, sorry to interrupt you there, but that must be quite an important thing at this time in lockdown, the monetization of the media that we create. Now, I guess that for a lot of people that you consult to, that may be their first question of how can I make money out of what I'm doing in the digital space?
Yes.
What's your first response to them when they say, I want to make lots of money out of digital?
I don't necessarily get it in that space. Generally, people, when they approach me, they have an idea and they have a sense. But my career background and history comes particularly from the digital publishing space. So everyone is very familiar with how publishing companies and TV broadcasting sort of businesses generate revenue. You'll buy a magazine, you'll buy the newspaper, you'll buy the DVD, you'll buy the ticket to go to the cinema, you know, all that kind of stuff. And the ways in which you as a consumer are not paying for that content, the publishers are very reliant on brands and advertisers to fund that, and that's where the advertising space comes into. So predominantly, most of the time, the inquiries that I get from businesses and individuals is, we have a business in technology, or we offer certain solutions and we have an audience, and we can see this audience, we can monetize this audience. How do we monetize this? The first kind of rule of thumb is, okay, we can plug in ads. How's the best way to go about plugging ads? And down that rabbit hole, they start going and realizing how complex and that space is. And that's generally how they find me, my company.
So one of the key components of what you do, as you've been speaking, is this consultation to companies and also consultation one-on-one to business owners. In this period of lockdown and kind of the way that business has shifted, the way that we do business has shifted, what's the best piece of advice that you can give to any business coming to you today asking for your help?
Gosh, I think
Hey,
it
we
would
go
just,
deep. It's deep questions.
I can see so. I'm gonna brace myself for this one. All right, let's like put the gloves off here. It's quite broad. It's definitely a very unique case by case basis. So I've noticed since I started my company, I was geared towards a very specific market in terms of the clientele in the industry that have worked in. So media companies, broadcasting companies, technologies, agencies, brands, that space. Any sort of businesses that are already familiar with the advertising and marketing industry. But since starting the company and, sort of promoting Pragmattica and offering the service, I started attracting a lot of businesses and companies that are not associated with this industry at all. And so then we sort of discovered an even bigger gap in the market. And it kind of became a process within the first year or 2 years, or even the first few months of starting the business, that there's a bigger market and a bigger gap to fill. So it's almost like taking a few steps back. And so then I realized I started attracting a lot of tech companies. They love building tech, but the business and the commercial elements in terms of building that tech and understanding the market and the industry, I started sort of attracting those types of businesses. And then we get quite involved in, before you go ahead and build the technology, let's explore. There's thousands of technologies that are already out there. Let's see if we can use those ones first. And if not, then reiterate or then sort of modify. So there's an element of digital transformation in place there, but specifically geared around digital media and marketing and the revenue generation side of things.
When we started chatting last week, it was quite interesting. And I wonder how much this is the experience of a lot of small businesses who went into lockdown not expecting what lockdown would be. When we chatted, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but you were chatting last week and saying, man, I've got no clients. I'm a little bit concerned. Things are, no new clients are coming on board. How difficult is it for businesses to acquire, small businesses like ourselves, to acquire new business in this period? Because you've got to pivot what you're offering, which is often that sort of one-on-one, face-to-face consultation in the room together. And it's kind of easier to sell then. It's easier to sell what you do. Now you're having to do business completely differently. So how difficult is it to acquire business in lockdown?
So I think it's just difficult to acquire business in general, particularly in the South African market. Anyone that has started their own business or has been running their own business, especially if you're a small business, and if you're kind of in the B2B market space in terms of your ideal clientele and clients are established corporations and companies, the procurement process and the red tape and the compliance is just ridiculous. You have big corporations and I had to go through this process where as soon as I started my company, I got interest from like really big international companies and big local companies and businesses. And for me, I went in and saying, great, this is what I can do for you. This is what I offer. I submit a proposal and a quote. And I would thought that it was just a simple thing of to accept and sign contract and there we go. Not the case, it's CIPC registration, it's tax compliance, it's banking, all that kind of stuff. And then you realize you need to now go through the accounting space and then you need to understand the legalities around that. So the procurement process from that, and as a startup business, where you haven't had that experience, it can really truly be debilitating in that space. Then you've also got the BE compliances, which is a uniquely South African trait on that space too. Yeah. So I think it's definitely about coming up with sort of an agile sort of methodology of really honing in and focusing on what is it that you do and what your capabilities are, not necessarily saying yes to whatever business opportunities come your way.
Mm.
So I kind of earned my school fees on that,
Yeah.
where, you know, as a startup business owner, you get a request or an inquiry, and you're like, great, you know, need the business. This is what they want. And you generally would say, great, I can do whatever. You just need the yes man. And then you kind of scrubbaging in the sidelines to say, how can I make this happen? Not the best approach. Sometimes you've just got to have confidence in what you do and your skills and what you're there to do. And even if it means that you turn down business for the right opportunity to come, that's what you need to do.
I want to ask you, how quickly did you pivot away from that when you started your business to actually really just concentrate on the stuff that you were good on, rather than what everybody does when they start a small business, is like, as you've just described, yes, I'll take that piece of business. Yes, I'll take that piece of business. Good grief, I don't know how to do it. What am I going to do? When did you pivot away from that and go, actually, no, this is what I am. This is what I do. And I know it's not a fixed thing, because we're always changing and adapting and being flexible. But how quickly did you make that decision to shift into, this is what I do, let me sell that?
To be honest, it wasn't that quick.
Okay.
I've been, Pragmattica has been running for about 2.5 years now. This is my third year in business. And it was only as of lockdown that I decided to, I wouldn't necessarily call it pivot, but open up a new revenue stream. I mean, I'm all about consultancy, and I'm in the business of helping companies and businesses explore new revenue streams. With digital as a primary focus. So in order for me to consult and do that, I've got to practice what I preach when it comes to this sort of thing. So starting the business was aligned with focusing on particular clientele, which would be the more corporate industry sector. And with that there's a different way of you communicating and marketing and different procurement processes. Then sort of transitioning and attracting a lot of startups and tech businesses, and then, you know, sort of honing in and saying, all right, I'm attracting a lot of different types of businesses. They're all looking for something similar, but not quite the same. But I can't spread myself too thin. So I need to be known as, all right, this is Pragmattica monetization. That's primarily where it's focused. And so since lockdown, you know, the past year, I've been pretty much on an airplane more than I've been on land, traveling a lot in terms of doing workshops, conferences, training and consulting. And now all of a sudden we're all in lockdown. You can't go anywhere, right? But fortunately in the digital space, there are elements that digital cannot replace, like that personal kind of thing. And then it's about sort of adjusting it and refining it and adapting to the digital. So now it's sort of, now I'm going into the webinar space. So what I would generally do of consulting with people and going to their offices and their boardroom meetings and doing sessions, which would limit me in terms of the clientele and the kind of business I can get. You know, I would have to turn down business and opportunities from one client because I'd already committed to flying up to Johannesburg and doing a session and working for that week for another company. Whereas now, just as of this morning, I got a phone call from a business contact in Greece for an international company that's wanting me to do custom workshops and training sessions for their company, which is a global organization. So now we need to package a workshop and training program for about 10 executives in about 4 different countries around the world. It's a lot more easier to do that now when you're focusing and you realize the only way to do that is through digital and video conference. Whereas before, when I'd get inquiries for that sort of training, it would be, okay, when's the best time to fly to their country and to get them to fly their staff to their head office and then curate that.
Do you think that this is kind of going to be the new normal going forward? Everybody talks about the new normal and what life is going to be like after lockdown. So before I get to that question, let me just back it up a step and say, obviously, being able to do stuff remotely and being able to use platforms like Zoom or live stream or some of the stuff that we use at Milk and Sugar has really come into its own during lockdown. And this leads into the question then, do you think that's going to be the new normal? Because we know for a fact that it's going to be at least another 18 to 24 months before international borders will open and international travel happens again as it used to, if you will. Certainly there's going to be a limitation of domestic transport for a very long time. Is this the new normal? Is this how we're going to conduct business? Is this how you, as Pragmattica, will be doing your workshops going forward?
So I would say that like we're not going to be in lockdown forever. It's not like you can never not go back and not attend a conference or not host a workshop or training session in a different location. I would say the way I see this panning out is that finally people have now been forced to adapt and learn how to use digital to their advantage. And once things have eased up and now we have that sort of freedom of choice on whether we want to go fully digital, we can kind of use a hybrid approach. So the way I'm seeing it for Pragmattica as a company to consult for clients is those clients that are in South Africa that would prefer that we work together and service them on, in-person space. We can do that, and it comes at a cost. And those that choose not to, well, there's a virtual way to do it as well. And then there could possibly also be a freemium version from an international perspective. And that's where it's opening up the opportunities for you to now really go international. It's funny how the borders have been closed to now make us realize that there are no borders in terms of what business you can get and what you can do when it comes to digital.
Yeah, I must say, I've found lockdown both incredibly frustrating from a business point of view, particularly because we do a lot of filming on location. But I've also been immensely excited by the possibilities that it offers, because we're doing production remotely and finding new and innovative ways to manage productions where we can't do in-person stuff. And I think that's part of the excitement of what this offers. I mean, a lot of people focus on the doom and gloom and, oh my goodness, how are we going to make our business work, which is a reality. But it also allows for that opportunity, like you've been saying, of how do we change and how do we adapt and how do we move forward. So it's been a fascinating conversation, Amanda. If people want to get hold of you, if people need your skills and have listened to you and heard, hey man, I must get in touch with you, what is the best way to reach out to you?
So I would say LinkedIn would be the first, and my company website, pragmatica.co.za. I am launching, again, coming to the pivoting side of things and realizing that the workshops and training that I service and the services there, a lot of companies and individuals have been requesting, but they're like, we can't afford the corporate rates. So I've decided to host a free online webinar in the next 2 weeks' time, where the topic is pretty much digital marketing tips and tactics, specifically on a budget for startups and digital businesses. So we'll do that free webinar, and then from that, those that are really interested, we'll start doing virtual sort of custom workshops, which would be at a smaller fee, which is pretty much affordable to what everyone can do. It's kind of like the price of going out for dinner, which you can't do anymore. So I'm kind of doing that while also being able to service the corporate clients as well. So it's just about expanding the services and the market and being able to sort of facilitate that service.
Give us the skinny on how we can, how people can be a part of that webinar. Do you have the details, or are we jumping the gun? Are you still going to?
So it's in prep at the moment. Okay. I would say the first point of call would be to subscribe to the newsletter on the website. So if you go onto pragmatica.co.za, if you're subscribing to the newsletter, I can see on my email and newsletter sort of content marketing sort of CMS platform to see who's been subscribing. We've also got a contact us page which has the email address, and then from there I'll be able to send the invites and announcing the webinar on how to join it.
Brilliant. So
Yeah.
that email address is at the bottom of the screen. Make sure that you log on and subscribe to Amanda's newsletter, and then you too can be part of that webinar coming up. You said in 2 weeks' time, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so depending on when we release this piece of content, you'll have to go and check the website. That's another incentive to go and check the website to find out exactly when that webinar is happening. But Amanda, it's been great chatting to you. Thank you for your insights, and listen, all the best of luck to you as we kind of adapt and move forward in this new space. I think you're doing some exciting stuff, and it's good to know that there are people like you that are out there that are able to help other businesses. So this has been another edition of In Conversation with, chatting to Amanda Bester, the owner and founder of, good grief, before I forget the name, as I'm getting all excited, Pragmattica Consulting Limited. Well worth checking out their website. So Amanda, have a great day. Thank you so much for that. It's been very enlightening.